Sup, my name's Multiplier and this is a mastering tutorial. And I'm drinking a lovely Fanta fruit twist. Anyway, I've been asked a lot of times to do one of these and I've kind of done a few mastering videos, but they've kind of not been that specific, and the first one I made was shit, so I'm going to give it a go, see what happens. Now, the problem with this video is I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do, because you can't just have how to master a track and then expect a 5 to 10 minute video, or even a 15-minute video, to really explain it at all. There's far too much to it. Because there's a few fundamental steps. Like, you have to, first of all, understand what you want tracks to, the finished product to sound like, almost artistically and scientifically. So you have the kind of the artistic bit, which is like how it's all balanced, like EQ and that kind of shit, and even things like how much like shine you want on it. That's more of an artistic thing. But there's also a lot of scientific thing, which is like how compressed it is, like where's the kick drum hitting, where's the sub bass hitting, all that kind of stuff. You need to be analysing tracks, and you need to know what you want the finished product to look like. And you could spend a whole video explaining the basics like that, and I did. So I'm going to assume you've at least seen my last video, which was something like mastering basics, or like how to master the basics, something like that, where I basically explain what you need to be like analysing in tracks, and what you need to look for, and what you need to be aware of, like the finished track looking like visually, from like waveforms and all that kind of shit. So I'm gonna assume you know that. Like, I'm gonna assume you know things like, for example, in dubstep, the sub bass should be hitting somewhere near -6 dB, because that's where all the other sub bass hits. And if say, for example, it's a lot lower than that, you're not making it loud enough. And if it's a lot higher, you're crushing it to death, you're probably distorting it, and you're overdoing it. And that's not the point. The whole point is you want to sound like everyone else in mastering. And, I'm not going to go into details on how you figure out what that is, and I'm assuming you know it. So I think for this video, I'm going to focus pretty much on isotope Ozone specifically, and I'll try and I'll ignore the basics of what mastering is, what the point of mastering is, and I'm just going to focus on Ozone, because at least then I can get a video that's not going to be more than 20 minutes. And I'll try and keep my talking shit down, but it's a big topic and there's a lot to talk about. And Ozone in particular has got so much depth to it that literally you can spend 6 months learning that shit. But on the plus side, if you're new to making music, mastering, using Ozone, it's really easy, and you don't need to have in fact, you don't need to know any technical shit to use it. It's really nice that way. It's as easy to use as you want, and you'll get good results. But if you want to get mind-blowing results and you want to get really technical, you can. It's really nice. So let's do it. I basically just got a mix I finished a few days ago called Bass Invading, coming out on Relentik Records in a few months, but it's just it's like a heavy electro thing, nice demonstration thing to use. So there you have it. Cool. So obviously you know the basics, so you know you don't want any compression or limiting on the master channel of the mix, and you probably know that it's nicer to export your mix and then master it separately. So I'm not going to explain why, but that's what we got. So we got our mix, and now Ozone's popped up. What is Ozone? What's going on? What's this shit? It's all complicated. Well, it's not too bad really. You get used to it quite quickly. You get used to the green, and the green becomes nice. So these are the presets. Kind of obvious. It's called Preset Manager. And my advice is you pick like a loop. Probably try and pick the bit of the song that's got the most shit in it, or at least the bit that's going to be the hardest bit to master, or kind of in a roundabout way, it's the bit that you can't. What's the best way of describing it? It's pretty best to tell you what not to do. For example, if we looped this bit and made this bit of the song really loud, this bit of the song would be destroyed. It would be crushed to death, and it would be horrible, because if you make that really loud, that same level of loudness will completely kill that. So you kind of need to pick the loudest bit in the mix, I guess, the best way to describe it. But you know what I mean. Just like, it's normally the main dancey bit, and then once you've mastered that, everything else will probably be okay if you've done a good mix. If not, you can always fix the problems with automation and stuff like that, but that's more of an advanced tip. So you got your nice little bit. I know which preset sounds the best because I mastered this recently, and it can take a little bit of time to find the right preset. You need to just try them all out. Well, not all of them, but you just go to genre-specific mastering is probably the best place, and pick which one you like. I know, in this particular case, Electro and Dance Rock Master, EQ and Exciter Boost is the best. So, I'm going to click it, wait a bit, and then the preset is loaded. And then we click close, and we've got our preset, which is kind of like the best place to start, and then we can tweak it from there. So, what do you do? Well, a quick little bit about the interface. Click these buttons, and each module appears in this big window. It's kind of obvious. Each module does what it says on the tin. That's an on-off button for each module. Obvious again. That arrow picks the presets for the modules specifically. So if I wanted to add some stereo imaging, click it, try a preset, either randomly or whichever one sounds cool, and then you can tweak the settings after that. But it's a good place to start. And other than that, it's pretty much just, that's the input meter, that's the output meter. You can probably ignore a lot of the other shit because there's so many buttons, and on this it's useful, at least when you first get into it, just to ignore the shit you don't need. So, yeah, how does it work? If you're new to Ozone or you're new to mastering, just drag the sliders. Super simple. The more you drag it, the more amount, the more that way. And then the further that way you go, right down to 0, which is the left side, is basically where it's not doing anything. So it's probably easiest to show what the sliders are doing. With equalizer, this red line is the EQ that's been applied, the preset in this case. So if I drag the amount, you see the yellow is what is actually being done now. And obviously the more you drag it, the more EQ is getting done. And then the less you drag it, the less EQ is getting done. Simple stuff, right? The nice thing about this is, if you're new to mastering, you don't know the technical details, but you still want to get it done. It's just nice because you don't have to worry about what order all this shit is in. You don't have to worry about settings like all these really complicated gates, compressors, limiters, attack release ratios. What's going on with all that? You just drag it. Nice and simple. And it's also nice because it means, if you're not entirely sure conceptually what dynamics is doing, you don't really need to know. You can just drag the slider. And I'm going to assume that you know kind of technically what each one of these is doing, because if I explained what a maximizer was, if I explained what stereo imaging was individually, it'd take like fucking 4 hours. So I'm assuming you know all that. And yeah, seriously, pick a preset, play with the sliders, and if you're new to mastering, or you just want like a good enough master, not necessarily a very, very dialed in one, it's probably all you need. You don't need to know all these settings. Yeah, nice and simple, right? Is that everything you need to know? Well, not really. Yes, if you want a really simple master, but I'm going to tell you a few little tips and tricks if you want to take it a step further. Because it's been 10 minutes, so why not make it a bit longer? This input slider is quite useful because basically with the presets, all these like settings, like in particular like thresholds, they're assuming that the mix that is going into the preset is at a normal sort of level. So if you've left, say, no headroom, you might want to turn it down. Or if you've left too much headroom, like 8 dB, which is fine, you can always turn it up. Just turn it up at the input instead of turning all these thresholds down. And it's just nicer. It's worth knowing you can do that. Similarly, actually you probably want to leave the master one alone. Yeah, so it's just the input one. I'm pretty sure if you click that button, you can unlock the slide, like the left channel from the right. But I don't know when you need to do that. That's retarded. But it's nice to know you have that option. So, after you've played with the settings, play with the presets, play with the amount, you're thinking, I want a bit more control over this. I have a really specific kind of vision of where I wanted to go, and the sliders don't quite give me enough flexibility. First thing I recommend doing is going into maximizer, because this is the bit that makes it loud. It's all done here, not done in dynamics, not done in EQ, it's done in maximizer. These modes are the limiting algorithms, so I assume you know what a limiter is. So the limiting algorithm is basically what's the best way to describe it? It's kind of it's how it deals with the clipping. So instead of just clipping it really kind of right, it's gone above this, literally clip it straight. These nice intelligent settings clip it in a nicer way. And what that allows you to do, it means you can turn it up more and more without the artifacts becoming too annoying. Because basically, when it comes to making it loud, you just keep turning it up, making it louder until the artifacts annoy you. Because if you keep turning it up indefinitely, it's going to be distortion and weird crackles, and it's just gonna. It makes this artifacts. You know when you hear it, it's like just unwanted distortion, and the sound gets all smushed. So turn it up until you start to hear these distortions or artifacts, and then just turn it down a little bit, and that's sorted. Nice and simple. And it's worth noting that you pretty much only ever want to be using IRC3, which is almost like the best bit about Ozone 5. It's a really, really good limiting algorithm, and it allows you to turn it up really, really loud without getting all these artifacts. And the downside is it takes up a fuckload of your CPU. So if you've got a slow computer, you might have difficulties using it. Like, there might be huge latency between you pressing play and you hearing it. But that's just something you have to work around. But it's a lot nicer, I think, to work around the latency and use a better algorithm, because you get better results. So that's what you want. Really important. Yeah, like, you don't want to be using anything else unless you're going after a really specific sound. But if you're going for that, you already knew that. So this button's quite useful to click as well. As it says here, limits true peak levels to prevent clipping in the analog domain. Just click it. On is probably better, right? And you can ignore pretty much everything else. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those things, it's hard to know how much detail to go into, but if you want to start getting more into this maximizing algorithm, what you want to play with is the threshold, the character, and this is this slider, which is basically, in the case of IRC3, is analog would be the release setting on the limiter. So slow would be a slow release, fast would be a fast release. Although obviously, because it's a really clever algorithm, it's not literally the release time. Whereas you have to say like hard, which is a really unintelligent limiter, it does it really simplistically. This literally is, as you see here, the release time. So it's worth kind of thinking about what slow means in terms of what the limiter's doing, but just remember it's not literally the release time. Because it's things like, it depends on the song. Like, yeah, it depends on the song. Like, whether you want it slow or fast. And I can't really tell you what to do. It does depend on the song, literally. The only thing I can really tell you is, I think the faster the character is, the kind of less you can pull the threshold down. And also, the faster it is, the louder it is, kind of. But again, it's that thing, just try it. Try and just master as much as you can, and then after 10 tracks maybe more than that, maybe less depending on how good you are, you'll start to have a feel over what this character is. But it's a super, super important slider. Something that pretty much it's the first thing you do after you play around with these sliders. You want to start having more control over what's going on. You start playing around with this slider and this threshold, but I'm pretty sure this amount is a way of changing the threshold anyway, so it's kind of does the same thing. It's also worth noting, if you look in this window here, you can see, although it's gone now, you can see what the limiter is doing, which is really nice because it means you can see what is triggering the limiter, which is super important, because a lot of times it may be the case, depending on how you've mixed it, you'll want, say, it's quite common to have the kick to trigger the limiter, but you don't want, say, the synth triggering the limiter. So you just keep turning it up until you start to see the synth bit kind of get triggered by the limiter, and it's really nice to see the kind of waveform come back with the results in real time, so you can just see what's going on. Yeah, nice and simple, right? Again, you've got presets. Just choose presets if you don't know what you're doing. It's kind of obvious, right? Fast and loud, brick limiting. If you want some brick wall, there you have it. Loudness warlord. Now we know what that is. That's just an insanely loud preset. So if I wanted it really loud, I might choose that preset, and then I'd change this to IRC free. Leave everything else the same, and it'll be good. Possibly now, because we're on IRC free, we can make it slightly louder than we would have otherwise. But again, it'll be that thing, you choose a preset and then you may even have to dial it back. Just, it's obvious stuff. What else can I say? It's hard to do a video on it. I don't even know why I'm doing this. Fuck knows. I said I would, so I am. Reverb, my advice would be pick one. Say something like, I don't know, tight room ambience, wall of sound. Wall of sound sounds good, doesn't it? And then turn it down, because basically the problem is, in my opinion, the presets have got way too much wet reverb, like way too much wetness. So just turn it down until it's, I don't know, like 0.8, 1.6, around then. What that'll do is it will give you that really subtle reverb, because in the mastering chain, most people don't have any reverb, but I'm personally on the side that says it's nice to have a really subtle amount of reverb, something you can't hear. You literally won't hear it, but it will just add a nice final filling out into the mix and give it a nice kind of like shine, but it's not really a shine. A harmonic exciter is really better described by shine, but it's nice just to have that subtlety in there. I think it does give us the result a more finished feel. So yeah, again, I mean, a lot of this is kind of obvious. If you know what reverb is, you can just play with the settings depending on what you want. There's no formula to mastering. There's places you can start. There's kind of workflows that it's nice to kind of use because it gives you somewhere to start. But yeah, just do whatever you want. And if you'd like the final result, and the final result sounds loudness-wise in the same ballpark as other tracks, you're laughing. It's all good. There's no real magic to mastering, despite what all the mastering expensive guys will say, that they have to put it out through loads of expensive analog gear. It's like, seriously, fuck that. If I showed you a Beatport track, you would not know which ones are being through analog gear. You categorically would not know. Assuming it's a good track. You can kind of, on the really poor tracks, you can tell. But I'm assuming you're making good tracks, right? So no one will be able to tell whether you're inboard or outboard gear. Because something to know about Ozone is they do a lot of, I'm not sure the best way to describe it. It's like they've got a lot of shit in their algorithms and their programming that gives it an analog feel. I'm not sure how they do it, but they probably just sampled white noise in a bunch of through analog gear. Well, basically, there's ways you can give that analog character that people like digitally, and Ozone does it. Because analog mistakes, analog kind of artifacts, with the right word, are a lot nicer than digital ones. So Ozone builds that in. Isn't that nice of them? And if you go deeper into Ozone, you can control all that shit. So yeah. Reverb, add a little bit. Like it's sometimes nice just to pick a preset, like that say, and then just drag it all the way to the left, and then just one bar up, and that'll give you something nice and low, which is what you want, because you just don't want a lot of reverb. It sounds shit. I'm not even going to show you because you know it sounds shit too. Harmonic exciter, again, pick a preset. It gives it that kind of, it adds in harmonics to different frequency ranges, to kind of give it, just add in more shit really, make it sound better, fill in the frequencies that aren't there otherwise. It's kind of, you can make it subtle or unsubtle, but yeah, I mean, it's hard to describe. I mean, just Google that shit if you don't know what it is. It just gives it a nice character. Like, basically, pick a preset, drag the slider, and you'll hear the difference. And I can't tell you what preset to do. I can't tell you what bands you should be using because it depends on the track. And you can get more and more into it using all these bands and all that, like all these different modes. Like some of them use odd harmonics, some of them even. Warm sounds nice, doesn't it? So you just pick what you want, slide it around. If you can't hear the difference, you're not really listening through proper headphones, which is worth noting. But if you like it, leave it. If you don't like it, turn it down. If you think it sounds better more, turn it up. That's all there is to it. There's no point in me telling you what all these stupid little buttons do and all these options do, because it's like, don't really need to know it. And if you do need to know it, you don't need me telling you. So that's that. Dynamics, there's a compressor and a gate and a limiter. They've got this cool kind of, I'm not sure what you call it, but they kind of do all three at the same time, depending on how, like what threshold it goes to. So if it's below this threshold, the gate is doing stuff. If it's between there, the compressor's doing shit, and it's doing there, the limiter's doing shit. All that kind of stuff. Look it up in the manual if you want, but for most of you who are watching this video, I was once watching these videos a few years ago, and you fucking don't want to start getting into all these settings. Just pick a preset, slide it around. If you can't hear the difference, get some better headphones. That's one thing I did learn. Yeah, and that's that. EQ, it depends on the source material, but just drag it around so it sounds cool. I mean, it's obvious stuff. You drag it. I mean, it's an equalizer. Doesn't need me telling you to do that. And stereo imaging, I'm a big fan of just making shit quite wide. Yeah, choose which one you want. It's all multi-band. For example, you see the different bands. It's obvious. Don't need me telling you that. That one does that band, which is the low frequencies. That one does the middle, and if you drag that, it drags that one down. It's obvious stuff. So don't need me telling you. Other than pick a preset, really. You got all these like fucking meters and shit, but I don't know what you use them for. It's like, I've never seen anyone look at this meter and then decide to change it. So yeah, I think there's probably some button somewhere that allows you to listen in mono, to like do a mono check. I should probably tell you where that is. Can't remember. Yeah, it's worth checking your mixes in mono. If your bass has got some weird stereo stuff going on, if you made the track like I did, and you know the bass is only in the center, then, or middle, I guess you call it, you don't need to check it mono because you know it's going to be good. It's only the bass that has problems from listening in mono, and then you can always make that argument, just fuck anyone that listens in mono because it's stupid. And then someone says, oh, you're making dance music, it has to sound good in mono for the club. Well, any club that's still playing in mono, you can't fucking hear the details of a mix anyway, so who cares? Fuck that. So yeah, live with it. 24 minutes, fuck. I feel like I haven't said anything, but I never say anything in these videos. Just, yeah, open up Ozone, see what you like, try what the buttons do. It feels obvious to me. Like, don't press a button if you don't know what it does, or if you just want to see what it does, press it, and then if you don't like it, put it back. Like S, what does S mean? click it when you're playing, you very quickly realise it's solos this band. B, bypass, all that kind of stuff you pick up really quickly. You don't need me telling you. Again, it's like each bit has so many options, so like see all these different options. You can get more and more into this shit if you want. Like general options. I don't know. Do you want solo side channel in mono? But you can get more and more into it the more you get into it. So yeah, my advice would literally be start off just with the sliders, and then one bit at a time. As you want more control, you learn a setting at a time, and then eventually you know most of the settings. Pretty easy. Yeah, run out of shit to say. Well, I don't even know why I did this video. This video was stupid. You can't explain to someone mastering in less than a few hours. Yeah, you just gotta analyze tracks and then figure out one bit at a time how to get closer to that sound and that the finished product you want. And you won't get there immediately, but that's fine. You'll get close super quickly and easily. And then the more experience you have, the closer you'll be able to get. And then just basically master lots and lots and lots. Because it's hard for me to kind of conceptually explain. I mean, it's a relatively simple setting, but it's one of the first ones you start playing with yourself. It's like the character on the limiter. It's hard for me to kind of tell you without me spending 45 minutes alone with that setting, just showing you tracks and then showing you different settings, listening to it a lot, and then exporting it and analysing it in the track to waveforms. And I'd spend literally 45 minutes on this setting alone if I told you everything of how to do it. So I can't. I give up. Fuck it if you got to this stage. I don't care. Whatever. I should probably plug my Facebook and stuff. Links below. Yeah, click them all, follow it all, do all that shit. And yeah, tell me what I've done wrong. Like, what I'm going to do is stick in the comments what you want me to like specifically tell you about mastering. It's such a big subject. It's like when someone says, how do you make dubstep? It's like, you can't do a short video on it. So yeah, tell me if there's any specifics you want to know, like if there's something you don't understand, or like if you're, I don't know, you're like, what's stereo imaging? I don't know what it is. I can tell you. Or you can Google it. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, I should just stop. I've lost all interest in this video. Play around with it. It's obvious. If you bought it or you're trying it out, just get Ozone and learn how it works. It's not my job to tell you. It's not like I made a video saying I'd tell you how it works. So, yeah. Close.